we have the closing and the launch of The Circle by Sandeep, right? Sandeep came to Teach for India in 2009 after having worked as a fundraising consultant with Ashoka and teaching secondary science in Washington, D.C. as a Teach for America Corps member. He has led the creation and implementation of Teach for India's first institute. Sandeep has also worked in a number of different capacities across programs, city operations, and knowledge. Sandeep, over to you.
Thank you so much for that. And hi, everyone. It is good to be here. I am excited to be closing out, though quite sad, to be closing out what has been an incredible few days together. And as we do so, let's go ahead and jump right in. And I'm going to take us through and try to recap a little bit of what we've seen over these past 4 days. So we started here a couple of days ago with a couple of big objectives that really held us all together for what we call inspirED. And one of those was to see the truth. Right? We said we wanted to spend these 4 days really seeing the truth. And the second is we said we wanted to feel the urgency. And then finally, we said actually what we really wanted to do was to seize the opportunity. And so we said these 3 things were things that we just had to be able to spend these 4 days doing. And when you looked across these 4 days, they were actually spread somewhat evenly across some pretty interesting topics. We said day 1, we're going to actually dive into schools and schooling. And then on day 2, we focus on rebuilding the future. Before day 3, we said, what does it mean to go beyond the basics? And then finally today, we said, how do we bring this to the role of you and I, and how we actually rebuild the system? And when you broke those down, you saw some exciting topics that all of you have seen. Topics that range from what does it mean to redefine schooling? What does it mean to rebuild the system? How do we actually bridge the gaps? And how do we do so even with things like early childhood? We heard from folks on how do you bring socio-emotional learning in the arts? We heard from folks on how do you bring things like sports? We heard a lot of topics on inclusion and what does it mean to embrace all? And then finally today, we took another check. And we heard from a range of topics. What does it mean to cultivate leadership for the marginalized? And what is the power of proclamation? You should take a breath in because we've heard from a lot. And when you look inside of what's happened in this, there have been so many nuggets of wisdom and so many learnings that have happened. These are just some of them, right? Holding questions like what really matters for kids? And what do we want to change? And what do we want to retain? And how do we gain the wisdom to be able to know the difference? Holding things like, actually, there's so much power in really being able to use art, image, and theater to be able to get an entry point into our minds. Holding things like, how do you develop EQ and not just IQ? And holding things like, what does it mean to design an education system that is radically new so that it's actually serving our kids' needs, not just the needs of yesterday, but the needs of tomorrow. So many learnings and so much wisdom packed into these 4 days. And sadly, we're bringing this to a close. And as we did so, well, I reached out to some folks over the course of the last few days, and I said, what were your biggest learnings? And the big question I asked folks that attended, I said, what were your biggest ahas? What were your biggest insights? And here's a little bit of what I heard back. I heard folks saying, actually, like, I'm realizing that our discussions just become richer when we bring kids into them. I heard things like, actually, I'm starting to realize that kids they're facing a learning gap, but they're also facing a play gap. I heard things like, actually, this piece around EQ, like that is what is sitting most with me. And folks continue to surface their ahas and their insights. And so now I want to turn it over to you folks as we close out these 4 days. My big question for you, and I want you to come over to the chat box with me. So come over to that YouTube chat box. What were your ahas? And what were your insights? And we're going to let this sit for the next minute or two. Love to hear from all of you. What were your ahas? What were your insights? What were the big revelations, the moments that came up? And as we do so, we'll wait just a minute or two to hear from all of you. So over into the YouTube chat box, what were your ahas? What were your insights? ahas and insights. Seeing things like, what does it mean to focus on inclusion at different levels, like the family as well as the community? Thank you for that. From Chetar, like collaboration from the community to actually grow together. And actually, I'm leaving reinforced thinking about collaboration. Thank you for that. Yeah, really loved seeing kids in all the conversations from day one. How do we use art to really reach the hearts of kids? I love that. There's a lot more to be done. So true. And education, what a profound statement, right? Education is the solution, but sadly, we're seeing this huge crisis in education. The importance of leadership. I feel like I'm pushed to read more, to journal more. How do we go beyond the basics? A lot of focus on saying, actually, I'm trying to believe that together we can actually achieve so much. Yeah, I love this site from Aloma, right? Like, yes, there was a loss of learning, but let's not forget that our kids actually learned a lot organically. And now that we're bringing kids back to school, how do we feed into organic learning? Power and activity-based learning, right? And believing that we can actually do this. Thank you for all of this, folks. There's power in art therapy to overcome trauma. So many insights, so many ahas from what was 4 days filled with sessions. My hope for you and my push for you is, as you leave this, if you miss stuff, come back to the Firki platform, be able to basically catch up on stuff that you missed, because there was a lot packed into these 4 days. So I also reached out to folks and I said, well, don't just tell me about your ahas and insights. Like, tell me, what are you feeling inspired to commit to? And I reached out to anybody that I could talk to that I knew. And here's some of what I heard. I heard that, I'm actually leaving here really committed to ensure both student representation and voice. This is one of the commitments people are willing to make. I heard, I'm committing to finding ways to immerse myself in learning throughout the year. I'm hearing, I actually want to work towards inclusivity for the lesser abled. I heard commitments like, how do we ensure that we bring the entire village into raising the child, into our conversations? I heard things like, how do we help people understand the difference between obedience and respect that Kieran left us with on day one? And these were some of the commitments that people said they are feeling inspired to make. And now I'm going to turn this back over to you. Before we close this out, my final nudge to all of us: what is one commitment you are leaving these 4 days inspired to make? So what is one commitment you are leaving these 4 days inspired to make? Come back over to the chat box with me one final time. Commitment to selfless service. Yeah, I love that. Feeling, leaving recharged and filled with motivation. Thank you, Indu. What is one commitment you are inspired to make as you leave here? It can be a commitment, big or small. Commitment to inclusion. Commitment to loving everything that I do. How powerful. Leave it open for 30 seconds. Anyone that wants to put a commitment there. Commitment to see students' unique ability and talent. Yeah. Commitment to finding a way to change the assessment system, right? Commitment to holistic learning, commitment to campaign for student voice and partnership, a commitment to more engagement. I'm committing to learning, unlearning, and relearning. Commitment to basically making myself more aware of reality. Commitment to engaging with stakeholders and students and listening along the way. Commitment to having the social, emotional teaching. Commitment to taking really bold measures and not just waiting for change to happen. I love that. Committing to rebuilding the confidence of our kids, and that is so, so needed. Commitment to bringing diverse voices into this movement. I love that. A commitment to making every child enjoy education and making sure they benefit from it. Yeah. So powerful. And as these continue to come in, folks, we're going to be bringing this to a close. And what a better way to bring it to a close than with these powerful set of commitments. My hope is that you leave here committing to basically do what is right for kids. And my hope is that all of us leave here committing to do right by the kids who need us the most. And with that, folks, we're going to be closing out inspirED. A lot of gratitude to all of you for being here. And a lot of gratitude to the Fairkey team for basically hosting this over these past 4 days, and to all of these facilitators who came together so graciously to be able to basically leave us with so much learning. So thank you all. Please do visit the Fairkey platform to know more, to catch up on sessions that you missed. And with that, we will be signing off today. Have a great evening, folks, and have a great weekend ahead of you. Thank you, everyone.